Nice and easy, Vincent. Good morning and goeiemorgen from South Africa, where I have gone not just to wear my safari outfit or to escape the ever more tense German Corona winter, but also to buy yet another beautiful, dilapidated 1980s off-road icon. This one, of course, being the Toyota Land Cruiser. Now, the Toyota Land Cruiser has been around for over 70 years and it has a super interesting history that I may cover in another video. But for this one, suffice it to say that 29 years after the original Land Cruiser came out, Toyota released this, the 60 series, brand new in 1980. And this one is a 1982 model. Now, the 60 series retained many of the features of its predecessor, the 40 series. In other markets, there was the 55 series, but here in South Africa, it was just the 40 series and then the 60 series. So the early 60 series took over a lot of the features of the 40 series, and it retained the rugged characteristics, the off-roading capabilities, but it had to fit into a new market, and that was the new emerging SUV market in the US. And to compete in that market with the Jeep Wagoneer and vehicles of that nature, it had to get a lot bigger. So this has a really spacious cabin, which makes it great for converting it to a four-wheel drive or overlanding vehicle these days. Now, the 60 series was manufactured until 1990, this one, of course, being a 1982 model, as I said, in what Toyota calls Alpine White. That does not include any of the rust spots you can see over there. And Toyota introduced the 60 series to South Africa in 1981 with a bit of a publicity stunt, where they took two stock Land Cruiser 60s and put them in a 1,000-kilometer desert race through the rugged terrain of Botswana, and they did really well. So people started to sell off their Land Rover Mark II and go with the Japanese alternative. Just a quick side note, if you hear any strange noises in the background, right behind that fence is Kruger National Park, and the hippos are taking their morning bath. I bought this Toyota Land Cruiser 60 many years after the original owner, and with 258,000 kilometers on the clock, 2 weeks ago in Pretoria, South Africa, for the princely sum of 73,000 bucks, which, if you do the math from South African rand into euros, that's right around the 4,000 euro mark. And it only being a 4,000 euro truck, I mean, if they're in great condition, these can go for very princely sums. But it only being a 4,000 euro truck, obviously it comes with its fair share of, shall I say, projects. So it's a project car, but it's a wonderful canvas. As I said, the cabin is incredibly spacious, even for by today's standard. And if you look online, you can find incredible conversions of this truck, which is a little bit what I have in mind, but I'll get to that in just a second. Now, one of the reasons the 60 series remains popular today is the simplicity of its mechanics. And that starts right here with another Toyota icon, the 2F engine. Now, this F-Series engine was first introduced in 1949, actually, before the 40 series came out. And the 2F then was carried over from the 40 series to these earlier Model 60s, when it was then replaced by the 3F engine. Now, as you can see, there's absolutely no plastic covers or anything here. You can see straight down to the block. It's all cast iron construction block and head. 4.2 liters of displacement. That's 256 cubic inches for you American viewers. It's 271 Newton meters or 200 foot-pound of torque, and 135 horsepower, carbureted gasoline. Here they call it petrol engine. And the main thing that this is known for is to be absolutely bulletproof, because it is so simple. On the flip side of being absolutely bulletproof, the power output is obviously not very impressive, 135 horsepower by modern standards, but it is enough to kind of just putter along on the highway. You are able to overtake trucks uphill So while 135 doesn't sound quite as impressive as you might hope, it is enough to get along as a day-to-day driver. And off-road, it almost has the characteristics of a diesel engine, where down low it has a lot of torque, obviously with the big displacement, and you can just kind of putter along. It's very hard to stall this engine. Now, on the flip side of that, very large displacement is obviously the fuel consumption, because it's quite substantial, shall I say. On the highway, I've been averaging about 50 liters per 100. That's cruising at around 100 kilometers per hour, or 90 maybe. It does go all the way up to 130 if you push it, but then your fuel consumption is going to be closer to 18 liters, which is what I've been doing when I'm off-roading, or when there's more off-roading involved. 18 liters per 100 kilometers, and I'll put up on the screen what that's in miles per gallon. Now, one interesting detail I found here under the hood is, well, interesting for a car nerd anyway. Interesting detail is the cap to this reservoir over here, which you can see says Toyoda with a D. And I found out that that's actually the name of the founder of Toyota, Ichiro Toyota, who founded the company in 1937. And at the beginning, it was called Toyoda, just like his family name. But when he switched to producing cars, he decided to call the company Toyota with a T. And there was several reasons for that. One, he thought it sounded better. Two, he thought it looked more symmetrical when written in English. But most importantly, Toyota with a T can be spelled in Japanese scripture with 8 pen strokes. Now, why is that important? Well, the Japanese are kind of superstitious, so 8 is a lucky number. And he decided that it was worth, for having the luck on your side, change the name to Toyota. And I guess all us Toyota fans today, we're happy that he did, because it looks really cool. Now, mechanically, this truck is very sound. The previous owner, or the person I bought it from, actually intended to do a full restoration. So he already changed all the oils, filters, and took care of a lot of the maintenance items. He changed the clutch, put on a new water pump, flushed out the entire cooling system. He also put on these really cool looking mud terrain tires, which are almost brand new. And he had the rims powder coated in gray, which I think was a fantastic choice. And it kind of alludes back to the really retro looking 40 series. Now, an interesting detail, anyway, for my generation of off-roaders, other people might now slap their forehead and say, how didn't he know this? This is how real off-roaders are these manually locking hubs. These days the standard is auto-locking hubs, so that's what I've been experiencing, but this one has manual locking hubs. So what happens is, if you want to switch from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive, so engage your transfer case, then the drive shaft that powers the front wheels is connected with a lever in the interior, is connected to the transfer case, but the actual drive line in the front axle is still free spinning. So you still need to complete another step to engage that drive line and to actually send power to your wheels. And that's right here on the hub, where you have 2 markings. It says free and lock, and then you go ahead and turn it from free to lock, and now you actually have power at all 4 wheels. And speaking of the drive shaft for the front axle, that was actually disassembled when I bought this. The previous owner needed to take it out to access something underneath the engine, and so that's something I put back in. There also is an oil leak, which is usually insignificant amount on the transmission, but it gets a lot worse as the transmission gets really hot, so when you're driving long distances. So I'll need to look into that and see which seal is failing there. There's also a small leak on the rear axle diff housing, and on the front axle there's also a little bit of leakage. So yeah, the joy of old cars, all the seals are starting to get old, and I'll probably need to replace them one by one over the next couple of months. Now, many of the lights were actually not working when I first bought this truck, including the lights that light up the license plate. There was a lot of chafe on the conduit, and it just had chafe through the cable, and also both of the bulbs were blown. So I put in some new bulbs, a new cable conduit, and rewired that. Also, one of the headlights was not working, and I figured out that it's the fuse They have these really interesting little glass fuses. And yeah, bought a new 10 amp fuse for that headlight, and it's working fine again. The truck has this really cool split tailgate, which many Land Cruiser owners will tell you is one of their most favorite features. So the gas shocks are kind of worn out, so I'm helping myself with this bolt, but I ordered 2 new shocks. Availability is not great at the moment. Coronavirus and South Africa together, you end up with very little stock. And over here is your picnic bench. And as you can see behind me, the trunk space is absolutely massive. The rear bench seat actually folds over really neatly, and then you create a space that is 2 meters long. So a full-grown human being could sleep in there. I'll show you in a second. So yeah, nice and super flat surface. You could imagine sleeping in here comfortably, or building a drawer system that goes in with a slide out kitchen, things like that. So things you really appreciate as an overlander cruiser. That vehicle has it, and that was one of the unique features of the 60. The square sights, you have a lot of cargo space. When you look at the 80 series that came after this, it's a lot more concave shape, so you don't have anywhere near the amount of cargo space that you have in this. Now, when I bought it, I already put in some 12-volt plugs over here, and it has a dedicated second battery, so someone already had this set up as a cruiser overlander with all the wiring. There's no battery at the moment, but I'm going to buy another one and reactivate that system. Also, there's a dedicated Anderson plug over here, which in South Africa and Australia you use to connect fridges and things like that. So I'm definitely planning on having a fridge back there. You can also see that someone sprayed the bed with this really tough bed liner, and yeah, that obviously makes it very rigid. I just had cement in there yesterday and tools, and you don't need to worry about that banging up your interior. So that's a really cool feature. Now, continuing on the interior, as you can see, what Toyota sold in 1982 as an upgraded interior now looks very retro, with these striped cloth seats and window trim. But overall, it's in decent shape. There's a tear here on the seat, unfortunately, which I'll have to get repaired. But after a fair amount of cleanup, the seats actually don't look too bad. The thing that's the downside of this interior is this flimsy center console. A lot of people who restore them put in a completely different center console that's made from steel, because the plastic one is kind of flimsy. I took it out to repair it, but we'll see how well I do with that. Over here you can see that the radio slot is empty, so there's no radio. Underneath there's another slot that was probably for a VHF handheld. There's a hook for the handheld right next to it. A lot of the buttons here don't do anything. There's a space out on the bumper that looks like there was a winch mounted, and some auxiliary lights, so probably that was for that. This being the G trim level, it came out in 1982 with 2 distinct features that were very, very popular at the time, and that was power steering, which does work, and air conditioning, which does not work. Someone stripped out the air conditioning compressor, so I'm trying to find a new one, get that wired up, because it's summer in South Africa and temperatures can go all the way up to 40, and it can be really, really hot. So that would be a great feature, so you don't end up sweating into these seats too much and don't have to clean them all the time. It also is a rainy season in South Africa, so I had put some new wiper blades, and the wipers are working fine except for the interval setting, which sometimes work and sometimes doesn't. There's also no indicator blue little light for when you turn the high beams on, and there's no light for the reserve when your fuel tank goes down in reserve. I don't know if there was supposed to be a light. I will look that up, but yeah, some of the lights in the gauge cluster don't seem to be working. Also, I got the choke stuck, so right now it's sometimes a little bit of a challenge to get this thing started. These pads here on the pedals are worn out, so I'll have to replace those. But overall, the interior is decent, everything is functional. Over here you can see there's a nice long gear shifter. It's a 4-speed manual, and then there's a little shifter here for the transfer case. 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low, and that's all working wonderfully well. The steering wheel has a little crack up here. I think that's from expanding in the sun, contracting, expanding, contracting. The horn works. And yeah, it'll just take a little bit of TLC to get this interior back to not just functional but also pretty condition. One of the main gripes I have next to the center console with this is that the window doesn't crank all the way up. So that's about as high as it'll go. And I open up the door panel and there's like a ratchet mechanism which drives up the window, and the top teeth are just completely worn. So I'll have to get a new one. For now, I'll have to be just doing it manually. But yeah, let's go for a little bit of a drive and give this a duck score. No, I'm just kidding. Let's go for a little bit of a drive. So, driving impressions of the 1982 Toyota Land Cruiser 60 series. Starting it up can sometimes be a little bit of an issue because it's carbureted, as I said, and yeah, you tend to try to get too much gas when you're starting and flood the carburetor, which makes it really hard to fire it up. But it's incredibly quiet, I have to say, for such an old engine. So when you're driving down the highway, you have your windows all the way up. That actually works pretty well. So let's see what it's like to drive. And I unfortunately don't have my GoPro with me, so I kind of had to find a way to wedge in the camera over there on the tripod. I hope it's working and you get an okay image of me driving down a dirt road, which is what we're going to do right now. So yeah, once you get used to the shifting pattern, it's actually a nice truck to drive. It has leaf springs on all 4 corners, which are set up kind of soft. They're kind of a little bogged out at the back, actually. They would need replacing, but that gives the truck a really soft feel. So as we're cruising down this dirt road, it's actually very comfortable. Oh damn. There's a big herd of Cape buffalo that have come down to the river to drink. I don't know if you'll be able to see that in the background, but there's at least 50 of them. Really cool. South Africa is such an amazing country. It always blows my mind that you can live out here and there's zebras in your front yard and there's a giraffe strolling by casually. Just incredible. And I think this is the perfect car for it. For expeditions into Botswana, Namibia, this truck is tough enough to take on it all. Now, if you've seen any of my previous videos, Project Thor, restoring a 1988 Mercedes Geländewagen with my brother Lasse back in Germany, you may be wondering, you know, what is going on? Why this new project truck? Why, if you just have totally disassembled one 1980s off-roader, why do you need to get another one? What is all this South Africa thing about? What is happening with Project Thor? Is that still going forward? What's the latest on that? And what's the plan with this new truck? You know, what are you planning on doing with it? Where are you planning on taking it? And most importantly, are we gonna see a video series where the 2 trucks, one in Germany, one in South Africa, meet halfway, which I looked up would be somewhere in the southeastern Sahara and the Chad? Those are all excellent questions, and unfortunately I can't get into them right now, but I promise that for the next episode I'll get together with my brother Lasse. Unfortunately not physically, he wasn't able to come out here because of work and Corona, so he's back home, hopefully restoring the engine on our Mercedes. But I will get together with him on the phone and we will discuss all these questions, and we also have some important things to tell you about this channel. I said from the very beginning I didn't want this to be in my name because it's not really about me. So we've come up with a new name, and yeah, just some big plans that we have for this year, which we're excited to tell you about. All that is to come for our next episode, which is gonna air February 1st. For now, we're gonna stick with the once a month. You know, we don't want to promise you anything that we can't keep up with. So for now, it's going to be every first of the month. And I hope to see you there. If this is your first video, thanks so much for watching. And yeah, if you want to see more on old trucks, off-roading, off-road expeditions, then hit the subscribe button, follow us along. I always appreciate your comments, so leave one down below. I love reading them, and I try to get back to as many as I can. And yeah, that's it for this one. Hasta believe. Thank you so much, and goodbye from South Africa.